Some tourists really think they can get away with anything at the royal palace. But here's the thing, the royal guards are no joke. They may appear quiet and composed from a distance, but you don't want to mess with them. They're elite soldiers trained to protect the king with their lives. This video will make you think twice before disrespecting a royal guard. This man tried to touch the king's guard horse, but received the shock of his life. It seemed like he was gifted a king's guard horse, was once a royalty, or worked as a king's guard in his previous life, as he tried fighting for what he felt was his right to touch it. Well, the king's guard yelled at him, leaving him in total shock. This lady stood in the way of the king's guard during his match. She probably thought she was a ghost or had somehow become invisible, and the guard could pass through her. If she was, the joke was on her, as the king's guard was not in any mood to accommodate her fooling around while he was performing his duty. He kept matching without acting like she was there. She was probably beginning to doubt if she was really visible. If you think this woman is dumb, you should see this guy. This tourist happily recorded a video telling the king's guard he was handsome. He most likely thought the guard needed someone to tell him how handsome he looked that day. Did he think the guard would be flustered by his comment and call him in for a closer picture? The king's guard wasn't there for comments about his looks. He could easily get that at home. He was there to protect the king, and anything else was a distraction. This man definitely got what he deserved. Despite clear warning signs that the king's guard's horse should not be touched, some tourists cannot resist the tempting thought of getting a photograph to upload on whatever social media they have in mind, or touching the horse for no valid reason at all. This woman probably left her sense of sight at home as she reached out to touch the horse despite the warning sign. The guard on duty was not in any way going to entertain her disobedience to the clearly written rules. He shouted at her immediately to stay clear. Talking about disobeying rules, our next lady is definitely not a fan of rules, and she was not willing to be instructed on what to do or not to do. She reached out to the horse to touch it, but was shouted at by the king's guard. Instead of backing out like the previous lady, she gave the guard the most entitled stare you'll ever see, as if trying to ask who gave him the authority to tell her what to do and what not to do. Two videographers stepped out of the line and went too far with their level of disrespect. Despite the guard's warning, they were hell-bent on climbing Buckingham's palace gate. You can imagine the audacity. As expected, it did not end well for these two boys, who definitely were not taught how to behave properly from their homes and mistook the palace gates for mountains for hiking. The guard brought out his gun, aiming to shoot at the disrespectful tourists. Do you think he'll be questioned for pulling the trigger on people breaking the rules? I particularly think the king would have awarded him if he did. A tourist thought he could sneak up on the king's guard and take a picture leaning on the horse without being noticed. This tourist must have mistook the guard's horse for a statue in Buckingham Palace. Even after being warned initially, the tourist thought he had a special place in the palace and could get away with anything. So he tried to take his picture despite the king's guard's warning. But this guard wasn't in for his foolishness and shouted at him to move back. This woman thought the king's guard was a mannequin that she could flirt with because no one flirts with a stranger in that manner. Or she probably thought he was her boyfriend in the king's guard uniform. What level of delusion did she have? She leaned in, holding the guard's arms, expecting to take a quick shot with her royal boyfriend bodyguard. It did not end nicely for her. This guard was quick to retaliate, not minding her pretty face. This guy was eager to take a photo with the king's guard, and at first it seemed harmless enough. Standing at a respectful distance, there was no breach of personal space, which should have made the moment smooth and trouble-free. Instead of acting like an adult and posing for a proper picture, he makes funny faces, disrespecting the guard. The guard, trained to maintain composure and professionalism, tolerated the antics for a while. But as the man's behavior grew more disrespectful, it became clear that his thirst for a picture had crossed the line into foolery and walked away. People are no doubt hesitant to obey instructions, but this woman went a bit too far. As she strolled into the palace, she probably thought she was the daughter of the king, entitled to the palace. She confidently entered the archway, thinking she was dressed in her royal attire and that the princess was walking to her chambers. She had no reason to mind the presence of the guard who should be bowing his head to her royal majesty. The guard was not ready to entertain this Disney princess and watch her play dumb, so he treated her the way she deserved, waking her up from the fairy tale. Hope that jolt brings her back to reality. Speaking of entitlements, this man has to be given a medal for being the most entitled tourist ever. He leaned in for a photo with the King's Guard and his horse. You will initially think he got the kick from the horse. The King's Guard acted first. He learned the hard way that not only horses can kick. Here's where he acted entitled. You should see the way he stared at the guard like he just stopped him from taking a photo in his living room with his pet dog. This tourist must have come to Buckingham for free training to enroll as a King's Guard. Or maybe no one told him how to get the job. He was confidently mimicking the King's Guard as if he were a cartoon robot stationed there to amuse him. He must have found his actions really funny since he continued. This King's Guard should be awarded for his patience because some would have pushed him away the moment he began his foolish act. He went too far and touched the guard, getting what he deserved. This woman undoubtedly had one of her life's most embarrassing few minutes. She rudely tried to touch the horse's rein, but was shouted at by the King's Guard in public. Do these tourists ignore instructions, or do they just not see the sign restricting them from touching the horses? This tourist's disobedience did not in any way end well for her. Even her forceful laugh could not hide her embarrassment. Some policemen met her to talk to her and reprimand her disrespectful act, and she promised not to do it again. Definitely, she was never going to. This woman thinks she is about to take a picture with the Statue of Liberty, or maybe she thinks the guard is a mannequin dressed in the King's Guard uniform just for show. She leans close to the guard for a photo as if he is an object with no feelings. The unyielding guard screams at her face to send her away from him. She must have gotten the shock of her life. Is he an object placed there for tourists to take lovely pictures of themselves for the gram? She must be a joker. The palace guards will always allow tourists to take a quick photo with them, and if they are not misbehaving, do not come too close or touch them. This woman decided the best time to take a picture with this guard was when he was marching. She stood in front of the guard for a photograph while he was having his rounds. If she was expecting him to stop and wait for her to be done, taking her picture or probably do a pose, the joke was on her. He pushed her out of his way without caring about the effect of the push. It definitely serves her right. She will know the right time to pose for a photograph with the King's Guard. As large as the areas open to tourists at Buckingham Palace can be, some tourists are never satisfied. One of these unsatisfied tourists is this man who thinks he can get whatever he wants anytime he wants it. Watch how he casually tries to stroll into the palace like he has just bought the whole palace. This guard was not going to respect his age since he had no respect for boundaries, so he gave him what he deserved for trespassing. This man is most likely going to think about this yell for months. This guy seemed to believe the guard was some sort of specimen on display in a science lab. Standing directly in front of him, he began scrutinizing the guard, looking him up and down as though conducting an experiment. His intense and awkward stare left onlookers wondering, what exactly was he trying to observe? The guard, however, was not amused. As a soldier of honor and discipline, being subjected to such behavior was far from acceptable. The guard's patience quickly wore thin, and in no uncertain terms, how inappropriate his actions were. He told him off with a sharp yell, jolting him out of his strange behavior. This man thinks that the king's bodyguard and his horse are merely ornamental fixtures placed at the palace entrance for his amusement. His casual and disrespectful behavior clearly crossed the line. The guard, a highly disciplined soldier with years of training, wasted no time reminding the man of his grave misunderstanding. With a stern and commanding presence, he swiftly made it clear that he was not just a statue to be admired or mocked, but a living, breathing soldier carrying out an important duty. His firm response served as a necessary wake-up call, putting the man in his place and reinforcing the seriousness of his role. If you think you've seen the highest level of trespassing and rules-breaking by tourists, then you should see this lady. This lady clearly was not satisfied with taking pictures in the places she was allowed to. Or maybe she was just one to turn a blind eye to the boundaries set. This tourist has to be one of the dumbest encounters the King's Guard has had. There are clearly two guards on duty, going about their business, and here he is, mimicking the soldier. The King's Guard is definitely a joke to him. He probably thinks this is a comedy show, and he follows the lead of the main character, who is dressed in red attire. What a clown. To make matters worse, the friends of this clown stood behind the camera, cheering his unreasonable act. They probably talked him into displaying such disrespect in the first instance. However, as expected, he got the embarrassment he deserved. This child strayed in the path of marching King's Guards. Before you conclude that their action was heartless, You should know that the King's Guards are known for following their rules of not breaking formation, no matter what is in their way, and this child happened to be in their way. So they continued their rounds without minding the child, pushing him to the ground and almost stepping on him in the process. The crowd was wowed, but it was simply their job. On your next tour to the King's Palace, you should try to keep your kids in the right place. This video will remind you to always be alert and watch closely when you go on a tour of the King's Palace. This woman was standing mindlessly, paying no attention. The King's Guards were on a parole at the time, and she was in their way. You should know by now that the King's Guard would not break formation for anyone, not even a child. The King's Guard bumped into her, immediately shouting at her to stand clear. In this video, a man wanted a selfie with the horse and the Royal Guard, but the guard was unwilling to accommodate his amusement. He immediately shouted at him to move away. The man apologized and moved away. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel and click the notification button to be notified when we post our next video. Don't forget to like this video as well. Thank you for watching.